will be recorded. Want to let you all know that as well. Someone put something in the chat. Let's see. Okay, Destiny saying she can hear. Okay, thank you, Miss Destiny. Okay, so this is Discovering You State of Education meeting today, April 13, 2021. This is the Information and Action meeting. What is state of education? Student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change, starting with me, starting with you. These conversations are parent-led community conversations regarding educational challenges and opportunities. The purpose of these discussions is in improving student outcomes, to bring an awareness of educational issues and concerns, and to encourage community participation, involvement in our neighborhood schools, and to organize parents and communities to become leaders. Our objective is for parents and communities to identify their role in support of the educational system and to foster healthy relationships with schools and the education decision makers. Our learning target primarily is advocacy, strategies to support the education for all children. Parents in education, why the parent voice? I believe that many of us believe, and you all are more than welcome to chime in at any time, put something in the chat, but I believe that it's very important that decision makers, they need to listen to parents more, not just the parents, but also the community in which those schools are actually at. I feel that that is extremely important. Why is it important for parents to be a voice in education? The parent voice in education makes a lot of difference, because as a parent and as a grandparent, just sharing my thoughts about what we need in our schools, what the curriculum look like, what our schools are lacking. We have to be that voice for the children. We can also be a voice for the teachers, and we can also be a voice for the school itself. And that's why it's so important, in my opinion, that we capture the interests of our students and the teachers that's there, the administration that's there, as well as the school. And then how can a parent's voice change education? Parents' voices can change education. I mean, just being involved, being engaged, coming to the table and sharing our ideas and input about how or what we would like to see in our schools is very, very important. At this time, does anybody have any questions? Anybody here? I can't hear you. Hello?
Sorry, I'm chewing.
We're here.
Janice, I'm not a parent, but I am definitely a very invested community member.
Okay, who is that?
This is Nehemiah.
Nehemiah, I know, I mean, this is space for parents and those that support us as parents and those that are in communities. In our previous discussions where we basically talked about finances, we felt that it was important that, residents, you have a school where you may live at, and it's important that you know how that school is performing. It's also important to be involved, whether you're a parent or not, just because you care about people and you're passionate about the children, and you understand that the development and growth of our city is determined on how our children perform in school. You want to make sure that the resources are available in the schools that would help every child succeed in school. So it does not matter. This is not a space limited to parents, but it's definitely one with a purpose and intention to get more parents involved and speak from a parental perspective. I've raised all my children as far as like in pre-K through 12, but I'm also a grandparent, and that's one thing out of all our roles in life that would never change. I will always be a parent. I would die a parent. And if someone ever asks my children if I'm gone, who was your mother? I always be known as that child's mother. And so And even in your roles as mentorships, I think that if you're mentoring a student, I mean, that's a parental role that you play. And many of us have idols. And so I think that's also important as well. So right now, I'm going to share this very short video with you all. Let me know if you cannot hear it. And it's a video that me and some community leaders did with me, parents, other parents, and community leaders did with Good Reason Houston.
Hey, Janice, I'm not sure if you're screen sharing or not, but I'm not seeing or hearing anything.
You say you're not, let me see. Let me escape here. I don't want to take up too much time with this, so. You couldn't see it at all, Jeremiah?
Neither could I, Eddie Henry.
Okay, Mr. Henry. Okay, let's see.
Me either.
No one could hear it. And I'm not sure why that would be, because I'm on the share sound and optimizing the video. So I'm not sure why it's not going through. I'll try one other time. If not, I'll just have to catch it another time. So
There we go.
you hear it?
Yeah, it's coming up now.
I strongly believe that every kid deserves love, honesty, and a chance to learn.
I grew up in Houston and went to HISD schools, and I have seen a lot of love here. I've seen people who come together during hard times. I see diversity.
We moved to Fifth Ward when I was 11. And so when I think about what's going on now with education, I realize that I had what we need today, which is support.
I love Houston because it's so prideful. I have so many different religions, cultures. It's just full of like Houston pride.
I firmly believe your zip code should not determine where you go to school or how far you get in life. But unfortunately, that's where we are today.
The thing that worries me the most about the education system here in Houston is that the children that live in the low income, under-resourced area being left behind.
Quality schools can exist in every neighborhood and should exist in every neighborhood.
And I feel like that does hinder their education in a sense, which is why teachers are so important, because we have to fill in that gap.
Every child deserves an exceptional school that will provide them with great teaching.
So I think Houston right now is at a point where we're seeing a lot of change. The more we talk to parents in Houston in areas where they haven't been talked to historically, we're hearing that they're ready. We're seeing more parents and more students, really speaking out about what they need. But there's still a lot more work to be done. There's still a lot of people we need to talk to and voices that need to be represented.
It's not time to point fingers. It's time to find resolutions and ways of correcting the problems that are set before our boys and girls.
We want to level the playing field and give the students an opportunity to win the game off of their characteristics and their skills and not be defined by the circumstances that they're coming from.
It's a team thing. So if you build a team with your teacher, then there's no limit to what that classroom can offer your child.
Parents are such a vital part of our educational system, and they hold a lot of the work.
I'm gonna stand up, I'm gonna speak, I'm gonna be my kid's voice, I'm gonna advocate for my children. Anybody's children that doesn't have parents, I'm gonna stand up and speak out.
I think effective leadership brings togetherness.
And I know that the children are our future. And if we as adults change the way we think and what we do, we can help our children.
Every student that I run across, I feel like everyone has potential.
These are our future doctors, lawyers, news anchors, our future baristas at our local coffee shop.
Houston is growing in a dynamic way, and we need to raise our students now to be the future leaders, movers, shakers, because they're going to be leading the city, country, and nation.
They are helping society move forward in a way that's productive.
We really need everyone working together across all sectors to build a better tomorrow for our children and for our next generation.
All right. So, anybody have any questions at this time? Anyone have any questions? I want to get back to something that Mr. Nehemiah said. I don't want anyone to be discouraged about being a part of the work that we're doing. The goal is definitely to bring parents, into the space where they will begin to speak up about their children and learn more about what we need to advocate for. But those of you who have been in this space for a long time as teachers, educators, whatever role you have played, parents need you. I need you. Because there is my field, I've come from the legal field, the legal arena. And that, I don't think I knew was send my children to school. That's it. So it's a whole different language. And it's definitely going to take, like they shared in the video, it's going to take all of us to work together, whether you're a parent or not. We need you. We need you so that we can make a difference. We need you so that we can advocate for our children and know what we need to be advocating for. I want to make sure everybody have an understanding and clear on what the advocacy work is. Since I've been doing it, I think there's a lot of misconception about what we're doing in our work. It's not to scrutinize a district or anything or a particular school, but it's to get parents together to look at what's going on in the schools, to look at what the curriculum look like, to look at what programs are missing from the school, what activities, what we need. That's what the advocacy work of parents is needed. It's also to support teachers in things that they may want, as well as supporting the school itself. And parents, the divine order is the parents. Those are our children. And we need to speak up more about what we want for our children in our schools and make sure every child succeeds. And I know in the video I mentioned this primarily like the low income areas, but taken away from that, it's not that, it's the fact that those schools are in under-resourced, underserved communities. And based on data that is put out regarding test scores or whatever, it's not the children. I don't believe the children is the problem. I believe it's the lack of what's in our schools, the lack of what's in our communities. So I didn't introduce, most of you already know me. I'm Janice Thomas. I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter. I'm the president of Phyllis Wheatley Alumni Association, and now I'm in this work. And I got in this work just from the passion that I had when I was with working with Phyllis Wheatley alumni. And the parents had to step up and speak about what they wanted in their schools, what they wanted to do with Phyllis Wheatley. Since we had triggered 1842, what do we want? And the lack of communication, it was so many problems that I saw and I didn't agree with. And I was like, you know what, parents' voices are not here. I don't hear them. And so it's just been my passion and my drive to just try to pull as many parents together so that we can be that voice that decision makers come to for what should be next for our children. Anybody have any questions at this time? Anybody have anything they want to say? Don't leave me here like this. All right. So today, guys, we have an awesome speaker. And this came just, I thought about it. I was like, our last State of Education was on the superintendent search, right? And like they shared in the video, that what's so unique now in this time is that they're reaching out to voices that historically had not been part of decision making, and those are those.
I'm sorry, Miss Janice.
Yes.
I'm driving. This Lady Taylor. I was trying to drive and operate, and I know that's probably illegal. But when you said if anyone had any comments, just questions, I'm just glad to be on today in support of your efforts, what you're doing, to let those who are attending this afternoon with this engagement for this forum to come up with ideas and ways to make it better for our children. I'm in support of this effort, this initiative that you're putting on, and just wanted to say thank you so much for having a passion and a heart to have a care for our children, because we have a lot invested in our children. I'm a grandparent and a community leader. I'm supporting the efforts for us to make our voices be known and heard in the school system with the Board of Trustees, to let them know that we're no longer going to be quiet because our children are hurting. So I just wanted to make that statement, and thank you so much for allowing me to say that. And I'm in support of what you're doing.
Thank you, Miss Taylor is actually is Lady Taylor that you saw in the video. She came with us in the video, and it took some time, but she's beginning to understand what the work is all about. But as I was saying, they reached out, and some of you actually responded to the survey that I shared, and it was just a survey with the questions that the consultant firm was asking. And so some of you did respond, and I really thank you and appreciate it. And guess what? Those responses were sent on to JG Consulting, because I feel like it's important that they know that we're out here and we are trying to say something and we're wanting to say something. So those responses was definitely shared with them. And I appreciate those of you who did respond and submitted those responses, as well as those of you who participated in our Zoom call with JG Consulting. And so, because the superintendent is very important in this space, and as you know, HISD is looking for a superintendent. I thought about it this morning. I was like, wow, this gentleman here is like awesome. This is his role. And so he can help us a lot to understand the role of a superintendent, as well as so much, because he's been in this space for so long. But that's just me. Let me read his bio. This is a short bio, guys, okay? Mr. Jacinto A. Ramos Jr. is a national, state, and community leader. He is a proven leader on the educational policy, racial, ethnic, equity, and school board governance. Jacinto is the national chair of the 2019-2021 Council of Urban Boards of Education on the National School Boards Association Board of Directors, serves on the Texas Association of School Boards Board of Directors, as well as the president of the Mexican American School Board Association. Mr. Jacinto, come on now. Born and raised on the north side of Fort Worth, Jacinto is a product of immigrant parents from Mexico, devoting countless hours to the cause of providing a voice to the disengaged and the disenchanted youth of today. He is a former co-director of the Multicultural Alliance Community, is it still pronounced community? An affiliate of Courageous Conversation About Race, a part of the inaugural 2019 Acceleration Board Capacity Institute through Harvard Business School. Bridging the silos of activism, leadership, and community engagement, Jacinto earned a spot on the Fort Worth Independent School District School Board of Trustees, in June of 2013. 2 years later, he reached a historic milestone, becoming the youngest board president from Fort Worth ISD. On May 28, 2019, he was selected by his colleagues to take the lead once again as the chair of the board. He is on track to complete his doctorate in educational leadership and administration for 2021. So without saying anything else, I'm gonna yield the floor to Mr. Ramos. Oh my God, hype man. He is hype man. That's who he is.
Dennis, thank you. Yeah, my name is Jacinto Ramos Jr. My nickname is Cinto. Please call me Cinto. You know, that bio, that whole deal that people usually ask me for, it's irrelevant if the reason that I got into, you know, wanting to be a school board member was not because I had any aspirations to do anything like what I'm doing right now. My life has taken a whole new direction since I ran for school board back in 2013. But I'll start there. The reason I ran for school board in Fort Worth, Texas, is because I was really, really upset with the Fort Worth Independent School District. And when I got upset because I was a juvenile probation officer for 21 years, and I've worked with young people that I was trying to get back into the school system, and I saw how different Fort Worth ISD was from some other districts nearby, and how they saw our young people as deficits. Not all the campuses, but a lot of them. Enough that I would have this anxiety when I'm walking this young person and their family to get them back into school. And this dismissiveness and this nastiness of like, oh, you know, here comes that kid again, right? And I would sit there and try to find good ways to work with administrators. And sometimes I would just be frustrated and I would just have knockdown, drag out arguments with principals or assistant principals in the hallway, you know, and I've got my badge on and I'm running my mouth and I'm like, y'all are wrong. This is what's wrong with y'all because you don't believe in young people, you know, not understanding all the work that it took to build up this courage from a young person in the family to even walk back in that building. So if I had anxiety, I was trying to really grasp what they were feeling when they were telling me like, they don't want me there. White man, because he looks like a white man, but he speaks Spanish and his mom is Mexican. So, but you know, here's the thing with him. He was born in East LA, but he cut his teeth teaching young people in Philadelphia public schools, which that was for us code. He knew how to work with the Black community and Black children. He saw Black children as something beautiful, not as something deficient. And then he went to Phoenix and then he and a teacher and all of that. And then he, you know, obviously he's a brown guy. So he knew how to work with brown students as well. So we're like, wow, okay, this guy, he's done a lot. And this could very well be the leader if I could get him past all the bigots in Fort Worth who didn't want no person of color leading the district. And this matters because when I first got on the board in 2013, we had the first Black superintendent who had been teaching and administrating Fort Worth for over 40 years. His name is Mr. Walter Dansby. Walter was unapologetic about fighting for children, and especially for children of color. And that's what got him pushed out with that board at that time. They really just, they paid up, we as a board, and I voted to not accept his resignation But the board was so ready to get rid of the black man that they paid him $1.2 million to walk away. Taxpayer money. And so here's these conversations that I hear about people being frugal and, conservatives and, we need to be careful with our money. But they didn't care when it came to paying a black man to walk away. They happily cut that check. So my background in juvenile justice and gang intervention, I had been doing anti-racist work since before I got elected. So I was already coming in pretty conscious and being mentored by the Black community over here in Fort Worth. We had found ways to work in solidarity with one another. So when I'm coming in, I've already checked where my anti-Blackness is at. I've already checked where my anti-whiteness is at. And so when I'm coming into that space, I'm looking at a divided board and I'm like, man, this is just an opportunity for me to be able to use these skill sets. And I'm going to be real with you. It's the same skill sets I use in the streets that work in the boardroom. Let that sit in for a minute. The same skills I use in the streets with gangs, with young people in gangs, are the exact same skills that work with board members right now. This mentality of us versus them, of competing victimization, of the Mexicans are getting more, the white people are getting more, the black people get more, the Asians are getting more. That whole mindset takes us down a path of destructiveness. And the reason I say that is that unless we have leadership that knows how to build power and coalition, to find common ground, to be able to move that needle for third grade reading, third grade math, middle years math, all of that stuff, it takes adults in the boardroom that can work together. So I only speak for what's true for me in Fort Worth. I was able to be that person within 2 years because the first year I didn't say much of anything. I just took a lot of notes and I did what I did in the streets. I did power mapping. I did a power analysis of every board member, of the superintendent, of the high-ranking administrators. And the power mapping for me began with, what drives you? Why are you here? And if you're an administrator that's here for the paycheck, good. That's good for me to know, because I know how I'm going to check you later through the superintendent. If you're a superintendent, that were on the board at that time that had been on 20, 30 years, and the data never got better. So I asked them straight up, like, what have you been doing for 20, 30 years? Well, I'm here for the kids and we're fighting for this and we're fighting for that. And I had to say, that's BS. I'm going to call you out on it because the needle hasn't moved. And you know what you're here for? You're here for those vendors. You're here for those contracts. You're here to get your friends jobs. You're here to get people promoted. And they didn't like that. But by that time, I already done my power mapping. I knew I had my votes. And I'm going to also tell you, I violated my integrity 24/7 after they pushed Walter Dansby out. At that time, I said, you know what? Forget the ethics. And this is the way I defined it. These are white people's ethics. Because right now you're hurting black and brown kids in Fort Worth. We're 89% children of color. So I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to abide by your rules. So for those years, I violated my integrity. I rolled up my sleeves. I did what I felt I needed to do to cut deals, to get things done, and especially to get the right superintendent. What happens though after a while is it started to eat away at me. Started losing hair, got a lot of gray, and I really lost myself in the politics, not the politics, the politics. And so when I got into that world, I felt good for a while because I was getting victories for kids, but I started feeling really bad because it started catching up with me. And that was me as probably my Roman Catholicism coming back of guilt and shame. But whatever that was, it was a checkpoint for me to say, you know what, I can't continue to do this. Because while I know that I'm an example for young people, because young people in my neighborhood are like, dang, Cinto, they don't call me Mr. Ramos or anything, they call me Cinto. They're like, dang, Cinto, like, man, we got a turf now. We got a brand new $3.5 million field house. We got state-of-the-art mariachi facility. We got mariachi equipment like we've never had before. We have Parent University that went from your neighborhood to district-wide. I mean, there was so many things for us to brag about, but why was it at the end of the night that I wasn't sleeping good anymore? Because I violated my integrity and I started playing politics just like they were. And so I thought there has to be a better way. And that's why I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go back to school. I'm gonna get my doctorate. I'm gonna zero in on this. I'm gonna look at the research. But I'm gonna be real with you on this one too. Yeah, I'm grateful for the academic growth that I've had, but it's still just validating what I already knew. That there's some shady people in some of these seats that are there for special interest, for their own interest, and maybe they're not all bad. But when the results aren't getting better, I got a problem with that. And when I say that, it's I myself, I just shared with you a Facebook video that we did a town hall last week. What I'm telling you, I told my community just last week. I failed you. I've been in this seat 8 years, and our third grade reading scores are still at 34%. Our Black children are at 27. Our brown children are at 31. And if it wasn't for the handful of white students and a handful of, not even just all Asian, but just specifically like some of our Asian students, then we'd be lower than 34%. So what I'm telling you is I'm throwing myself on a sword as that I have no desire of running for mayor or state rep or city council. I didn't want to even do this. I didn't want to be the guy wearing the suit with the pocket square doing all that stuff. I didn't want to be the one. I didn't want to do that. But it's always been the young people that helped me get in office, because I had over 100 of them knocking on doors for me every week. There were young people that were in my gangs back in the day. They were my old juvenile probation clients. They were my youth ministry kids. I did Young Life and I did the Catholic Church. I had over 100 young people. And this isn't bragging, this is a testimony. This is how we were able to take out a PhD incumbent Latino in my neighborhood, because he was just politicking. And then lo and behold, two and a half years later, I'm the exact same thing that he was. And that's what killed me, is that I had become the person who I said I wanted to take out. And that's a tough pill to swallow. So I come to you, one, parent as well. This is my last term. You'll see it on the video as well. I told my community, I'm done. Four more years, I'm done. And the reason being because I also know myself. I have all the heart and passion for young people, but especially for my own kids. So I've already had my oldest son who's graduated. He's also just finished college at TCU. And I've got my middle son who's a junior at TCU. And I've got my youngest who's a freshman here at the high school down the street. It's better for me when I'm in the trenches with my people in the school, and they're always coming at me saying, the water don't work here, the stalls are out there, the teachers suck here, the principals are this and that. I feel the most effective when I'm with the people doing that work. So those of you that are parents or community leaders and you're there, you're in the trenches, I'm going to tell you something else that some of my biggest mentors said. Some of the people that need to run for school board are the ones that don't want to run for school board. Those are probably those of you that are being told, hey, you know what, you probably make a good school board member because you care about young people. You care about your community. I think the altruistic people are the ones that I'm drawn to the most. The ones that are dying to get into that seat are the ones that concern me, because my questions are usually, what's next for you? What do you want? Because you know what happens in some, not all, but in some of those situations that I've witnessed statewide and nationwide, when it comes time to make that hard decision for kids, are you going to make a decision based on your next step? Or are you going to make that decision based on what you know is right for those kids right now? And too often I see adults that don't make decision that's the right decision for kids for whatever political influence or special interest that may be in their ear. So my message to parents in my community and those of you that are parents and community leaders is, you're probably the ones that we've been waiting on, or the circles that you run in are the people that we've been waiting on. Because the other piece, I'll tell you, this is my 4th year as president, 4 out of the 8. I didn't want to do it the second time around. But I agree with my superintendent that in a lot of situations, we're not lacking resources. We're just leadership poor. And in my own board, we were leadership poor. When my board came asking me to get back in that seat, I said, I failed y'all, because I should have been developing 2 or 3 of you to succeed me. That's sustainable leadership. So since I came back 2 years ago, and I'll be stepping down as president next month, I have developed 3 of my colleagues to succeed me, because I told them, you know, the leadership, as you probably heard this, leadership should not be defined by how many followers I have. Leadership should be defined by how many people I've helped create and help support to be leaders. So that's a different mindset, right? So, but you know where I learned that? I learned it from my young people in gangs. I met this guy named Dr. Jay Otis from West Philadelphia. And he said, every young person needs to have 4 types of people in their life. You ready? First one is every young person ought to have someone who loves them and loves them unconditionally. Second, every young person ought to have somebody who expects the best from them, demands better, right? So let me stop here. The way I saw this as a parent, or being a son of immigrant parents, my parents didn't have resources or know how to navigate systems, but they loved me so much, and I knew it. And I knew it was unconditional. I had no doubt in my mind. My mom was the one who kind of would lower the bar sometimes, but my dad would come home from working 16, 18 hours. And he's like, I didn't cross this river as an undocumented guy. You notice I didn't say the word illegal. I didn't come over here as an undocumented guy to lose you to the streets and for dang sure for you not to get educated. So the expectation was always at max capacity. The third type of person every young person ought to have in their life is somebody who they can look up to. We call them a peer superior. Somebody who they say, wow, okay, if Destiny can do it, I could do it. If Ashton can do it, I could do it. And then the fourth type of person is someone who we call a peer inferior. I know it sounds bad, but check this out. It's like saying, okay, I'm now in grad school, but now I got somebody like Eddie who's in undergrad. Wow, I've actually come a lot further than I thought I was, right? Like now I'm in high school and now I'm looking at a middle school student. I'm like, man, it felt like a long time ago I was in your seat, but I've actually grown a lot. So let me flip this. My young people in gangs, they had these four to some degree. I remember young people getting locked up at the juvenile facility and they say, man, don't worry about it, homeboy. You get locked up, I love you. I love you more than anything. I got your back. I love you so much that if you get locked up, I'll take care of your girl for you. That's conditional love. But the second one also, I watch young people in my neighborhood recruiting other children at the swimming pool at the city park, paying $1 to get them into the swimming pool, then walking them across the street to 7-Eleven, buy them nachos and a Slurpee, and they were grooming them and recruiting them. But what they also did is once they got them into influence, they demanded better from them. What, you only sold a nickel worth of drugs a day? Man, come on. I know I can get at least a dime from you today. You can do better. I expect more from you. You know what I watch those young people rise to that occasion. They also mastered the third and the fourth one. Young people in gangs in my neighborhood, they knew what being a peer superior was. They knew, that's why they put the baby G's with the OGs. They're purposefully developing them. And they see talent a mile away, that they develop the most marginalized, most disenfranchised young people in our systems, and they welcome them in and they groom them because they know that everybody has capacity. And so when I looked at my young people in gangs and I would ask them all the time, like, man, tell me, why do you think that way? How do you see it? They say, because our backs are against the wall. And it's either we look out for one another, nobody looks out for us. And so when the adults in the community, when we were showing up, we're like, hey, what do you need? You need trade school? Do you need school? Man, they didn't ever want to talk about K through 12 because they're like, they don't want us there. So at least give me a GED and let me try to make some paper and let me try to get my life going a little bit. I got a baby on the way. I need to get some diapers. Right? Like that whole mindset is the way I walked into the boardroom. And so every time that we as adults in our system start losing track of our young people, I'm usually that moral compass. And what I do now for Leadership ISD, the nonprofit, which we have a Leadership ISD in Harris County, I'm the chief of governance and leadership. I'm the one that's now working to coach boards and superintendents to get their crap together. I'm usually the moral compass to have a one-on-one with them saying, hey, I watched that board meeting. You get a little sideways right now. And I tell you because I love you and I tell you because I love young people, but we got work to do. So what are you willing to commit to? And it doesn't always work, but I don't mind being that checkpoint because I'm gonna pause with this one to hear some questions or some comments. I am driven by the trauma of too many young people incarcerated at the juvenile facilities, which are typically Black and brown. And I'm also driven by the trauma of way too many young people that I buried in our coffins over here. I remember standing over a lot of coffins and saying, I failed you, and I'm gonna get better. Somehow, some way, because that is why in this governance, we use the line, I am the genesis of transformation. Not you, I. That I'm a man of faith, and I believe that my God has given me power and influence to be able to do work right here, right now, not to sit on it, not to waste it, but to do something. So while everybody around me would say, well, your fault that this kid got shot and killed, there's nothing you could have done. Could I? Could I have not done something else? Maybe if I'd have had them in another initiative. And, and I say that finally also because there are so many other young people on the other side that come And if you go to the Forward ISD website, you'll see a picture of me hugging a young person that's a gang member, tatted from the head to toe and everything. And I put that picture very intentionally to let people know, don't question me. Don't question my heart, and don't question my intent. Because I am about this anti-racist work, but I don't hate white people. I hate white systems and what they do to us. When they don't let us get rooted, and my mentor said that you can't love the fruit if you don't love the roots. And the biggest success we've had in Fort Worth is young people going through My Brother's Keeper, My Sister's Keeper, that they know who they are and they know where they come from. That our Black children say, I come from descendants of kings and queens. I know about Imhotep. I know that Africa was called a Kibalan. I know about the Ankh. I know the history of my peoples from a point of liberation, not from a point of enslavement. And this is what I get to tell board members across the country. Slavery is not Black history. Slavery is an interruption of Black history. Let's not get that twisted. So I also get to work with brown children to say, tell me your history from a point of liberation. We weren't enslaved, so we should have an easier road to finding our people and our heritage. I want my young people to know about Joaquin Murrieta. I want them to know about La Raza Unida political party. I want them to know their history like I do. I'm of the Purupecha people from the mountains of what's now Michoacan. And we're intellects and we're negotiators. And so when somebody says, you ought to run for school board, I'm like, man, I don't want to be no politician. And somebody reminded me, you're Purupecha, bro. You come from a people of master negotiators. We were never conquered by the Aztecs, or i.e. what are called the Mexicas. And it's not because we went to war with the Mexicas, it's because we negotiated our way through that. So that mindset that I keep talking about, that to me is a transformation zone. And the best part that I love to see is people like you, rooted in community, rooted in being adults that care about young people, because this is the world I love to be in. And so when Janice hit me up and asked me to come chop it up with y'all, I said, I'm down. Oh, let me not get this twisted. Our young people also learn about indigenous heroes and sheroes. They learn about Asian American. Like, do y'all know who Yuriko Chiyama is? Most of our young people don't. By the way, so I'll just share this with you. Yuriko Chiyama, Japanese American, who challenged Malcolm X. When Malcolm X said, have you ever heard that part when Malcolm X was asked by a white student, what can white people do in the struggle? And Malcolm X said, nothing. So she caught up with him at a university circuit and she goes, I disagree with you. Little Japanese American woman who was put in the concentration camp here in the US, right? And she said, I disagree with you. She said, I think there's room for all people to do work on social justice. And they had back and forth to where they became such good friends. I will encourage you to Google Yuriko Chiyama and Google Time Magazine. That image of him dying on that Time Magazine cover, it's her holding his head as he died. So those are the images I think that our young people need of solidarity. Because I'm familiar with HISD. I'm familiar with Aldine, familiar with a lot of districts around the state and around the country who got a lot of racial tension. And I tell them straight up, look, what's the common ground? Because this adult conflict, it's just hindering our work. So I'll take a pause, questions, thoughts. We always do with young people, we do a one-word check-in on our feelings, because the feeling is a transformation zone. Whatever you're comfortable doing, I'm here for you.
Cinto, let me first of all say thank you for joining us in our space. You know exactly who we are, and I'm particularly interested in the Fifth Ward area of HISD. We know our history. We are beginning to get people in the right spaces. Our parents are being educated. Janice is doing an excellent job. We have an alumni in the right place. We are beginning to look at coordinators and community engagement people, and we're all kind of circling the wagons, but things haven't changed yet. Assuming that we're ready to pounce, what do we do first?
Oh, that's an excellent question. So I'm gonna tell you this. So I use the Courageous Conversations protocol. There's the thinking, the believing, the acting, and the feeling. I think you can tell I'm a feeler and I'm an actor. So when you ask a great question like a thinking, ooh, that's a good one because I'm usually just doing, right? I think that for what was true for me and what helped me a great deal, and again, it could be very different, but You know, my neighborhood is one of the top 10 worst zip codes in the state of Texas in the 90s, in the early 2000s. So one of the things that we had some growth opportunities as a community and community organizers, where we had to start checking who was in our community. And what I mean by that is I was introduced also by Dr. Jay Otis from Philadelphia, that we needed to assess who the poverty pimps in our community were. And here's what it means. Who is making a middle to upper class living off of the backs of our kids in our communities, our social services? And if they don't have a plan on when they're going to exit, that means they don't really have a plan on when they plan to resolve the situations that they're saying they're here for. So for us, it was step one of assessing our community. Who are we partnering with? Who are we empowering? Who are we giving power up to dictate, you know, our well-being? The other one is, I don't shy away from politics anymore. This is the way I define politics. Anytime I show up in an inauthentic way to try to move you into a direction I want to move you in. Politics is an everyday thing for me now. So when I think about that question that you just asked, I also had to be willing to politic in my boardroom to sway the resources and the movement to pay attention to my neighborhood. My neighborhood now, 8 years later, we are now one of the most thriving communities, but it was a collective effort of what you just described. Sounds like you have all the ingredients. The final piece is that mindset. You know, one, where do you draw the line about where you're unapologetic about what you absolutely need to have? And are you going to have probably a better term I could use, but this is how we use it around here. Like, do you have a pit bull politically that's going to say, no, you're not cutting me out? And I think about that because when they were talking about putting field houses around the district, I said, wait, hold on, time out. My neighborhood has been excluded for decades. No, you're not putting that somewhere else. You're going to start in my neighborhood. And so I drew the line, but then I also went in politics, right? Because I knew what was moving those board members. And one of them, like, she wanted a third grade initiative, reading initiative. And I talked to the superintendent and I said, hey, give her that freaking third grade initiative that costs like $50,000 and give me my $3.5 million facility, right? So it's a balance, but I also knew that I had community backing. So that the handful of times that the Fort Worth West Side, which is the white affluent side, they come for me, and they still are. You could Google me. You'll see that they love coming for me. But you know what happens? My hood's got my back. And that allows me to fight even more fierce in the boardroom. It's kind of like that combo, right? It's that combo. If you've already built community, you're building capacity. Now I think one of the final pieces is, who's your warrior? And who's your warrior that's going to call it the way it is? And I say that I have probably 20% Black population, but I always make sure that my Black population in my community feels like they're 100% relevant, right? So do you have someone, or do you have people that are not going to exclude brown, indigenous, Asian, white? Like, will you have a warrior or sets of warriors that will fight? And will you have community have their back? I'll say this last piece on this one. This was I'm going in my third term, which I was supposed to be up for re-election in May. I am the second time in a row, the only elected official that doesn't have an opponent. Because my hood went around and said, don't let these white people convince you to run against Cinto. This is the best warrior we got right now. We need to lift him up. And we don't need him wasting time, raising money, running a campaign. We need him fighting the fight. So think about that kind of messaging, right? When you have someone that you have in there that has your backs, then you also want to have their backs.
Wow, I just want to say this, man, I love it. I mean, I'm in Leadership ISD right now. And what I love about you, you are raw and real. And so many times I hesitate from saying things, especially me being a female, because I know somebody's going to be hurt by those words, but I love it because we have to speak our truth. And the fact that you know how to bring it from the streets to the boardroom, man, that's what it takes. I mean, the just being able to apply those same principles, because it does not change. The principle doesn't change where you're at. And just, you know, because I feel like in our district, not just in our district, just all around the streets, those people in the streets are taking our babies and giving them what we're not giving them. And we're gonna have to step up our game if we want our babies back. And that's why I say, Nehemiah, I see you shaking your head. There is a place for you. You've been in this space for a long time. You don't have to have a child, but the fact that I know you're an influence to somebody else's children, to another child, to nieces, nephews, hey, don't be looking for your place here. You got a place at the table with us. We need you, okay? Because this is a new language for me. I got a lot to learn about education. I have enjoyed what I've been learning. But man, I am excited. I'm gonna be like Cinto, raw and real, because hey, that's what it takes. We know we don't want to fake it and shake it. We want to be real about this and definitely intentional so that our children, man, can succeed. So I'm done. Somebody else.
Dennis, I'm gonna add one more real quick. Infiltrate those foundations and those power players in your community, because if they're doing it with your consultation, it's better than them doing it without your consultation. So one of the things, a new frontier for me was entering the space of all these wealthy folks in Fort Worth. I found myself where I love being at the taco joint, and all of a sudden I'm at the Fort Worth Club or Colonial Country Club, and they found themselves talking to me kind of crazy. And I would listen, and I had to power analysis them too. And I'm like, let me figure them out. But it was the day when I told them, I'm not going to say it the way I told them, but I told them to F off. And their systems went into shock because they were so used to people of color bowing down to them. And in here in Fort Worth, I'm like, look, I don't need you. I don't need you. We were super effective turning my neighborhood around without your help. It'll be better if you engage because you got a lot of money. So are you down? Like, but I would always, I know I sound radical and I am. I'm pretty aggressive, but because you know where my trauma is coming from. But when I'm in the room, I'm pretty emotionally intelligent, and they don't usually see it coming, at least in those early years. And what I have been able to do is redirect those monies. Like when they were trying to come around and recruit a couple of months ago against me, I went and sat down with them at the Fort Worth Club, and I called them out. I said, look, the day's gonna come that I'm gonna dictate your fucking politics. So you best check yourself right now. If you're gonna come after me and you're gonna come after my hood, you're about to get a lashing that you're not gonna be used to. So, some white people responded. I've been getting a lot of emails and calls, and they're like, dang, you talk to us real crazy. And I'm like, well, you've been talking to me crazy. So it's payback, right? And some people just don't understand unless you cuss at them. At least that's my take. So when I dropped the F-bomb and came at them, I mean, I'm in their building where they're sitting there cutting deals left and right, including the school system. And I'm like, man, let's play ball together. Quit coming after our great leaders, because you're about to get community come at you and you're going to become irrelevant. And your poverty pimp mindset in my neighborhood, we're going to kick you out. So I think that's another frontier. If you can dictate those foundations and those monies in your community, sending whoever might be the best politician for that one, I don't know. It's just an idea. That's why My Brother's Keeper initiative is so well funded, because I used their white guilt and their white shame against them. And that's the other reason why Magic Johnson came, and he's been hanging out with our My Brother's Keeper here in Fort Worth. Of all places, Fort Worth, we're a bunch of racists around here.
Cinto, I wanted to get your advice on how to help, how can we help push HISD to take racial equity more seriously as like an agenda item? I work with the Houston Education Research Consortium. I am newly their program and community engagement manager. I've been pushing within my organization to explicitly name race. I'm also a Leadership ISD fellow, as Janice mentioned. Explicitly name race in the equity project that they kind of sprung on to us as kind of a political move to get some pressure off of their backs. But being able to see it from the inside, I just don't see that it's really going to do anything for our students. And so just if you have any advice about how to help push racial equity as a policy in HISD in your own experience.
Yeah, so great question, man. Three things. One, I'm going to say I am going to brag on this one. We're the first ones in the South and the first ones in Texas to do a racial equity policy in Fort Worth. And think about it. We're like the last major red county in the state. And how in the world did we do it, right? There's 5 white board members. There's 2 black and 2 brown. And I'm going to be real with you. 1 black and 1 brown did not want to do the work. I had to go convince enough white people on my board. But again, that's that mindset, right? That I don't look at white people as the enemy. I look at if your heart looks at me as if I'm deficient, then we got a problem. But we were able to put together 5 votes. And that's part of what I'm telling you, like I conducted walking quorums. I violated my integrity left and right to do this. So the racial equity that we did, it began with the board, and it has to be the board. And there has to be enough solidarity built up in that boardroom. So I know that's a challenge for HISD right now. I know most of the board members in HISD. I've heard multiple perspectives in HISD. They're missing that facilitation, that entity that can come in and create that space that they can't see themselves. My mentor, Ricky Clark, said, you can't lead where you don't go, and you can't lead where, no, you can't teach what you don't know, and you can't lead where you don't go. So I can't expect those current board members to know how to do the work if they ain't ever seen it before, right? So there's this racial division that I've been noticing in HISD for a minute, same one that was in Fort Worth. So how can you counter it? How can you support it is what you just said. If you build power in community, there's three pillars to this. There's the board, which I think is probably the most important one, because the board's got to be willing to stand on it and all that. And I know they got a policy, but they got to live it. They got to live it. The other one is the superintendent, but probably the most influential is what y'all are doing is building community. To have community members stand together in solidarity. You know, what's another one? To have students stand and say, look, model, please, board, model for us what it is to work together, what it is to work in solidarity with one another, right? There's so much power in community and young people saying, please be those leaders that we want you to be. That's who you need to be, right? So, you know, I'm just being real. I understand that we're going to be asked, and I'm going to be asked to come in and do some racial equity work. But the work it's not going to come from Courageous Conversations. The work is going to come from what was on my intro from Camp Community. I went to a space and I worked as a camp counselor and camp director for 18 years, where I taught young people how to build solidarity. And so that's another set of skills that I bring into the boardroom that I was able to do with my own colleagues. That I had 2 colleagues that hated each other, and I'll name them. Christine Moss was on the board 29 years, and Norm Robbins. Norm has been on the board now 18. And I asked both of them, why do you hate each other? And Norm's like, I don't hate Mrs. Moss. He's a white man. She's a black woman. He said, I don't hate her. He goes, she just has like something against me. I don't know what it is. So I'd rather just choose not to talk to her. Okay. So I went over to Mrs. Moss. Mrs. Moss, why you hate Norm? She was straight up. She was like, I hate him because he voted against the STEM school that I wanted to put on the black side of town. Okay. I took them both out to lunch, massaged the conversation, and it came up. And Mrs. Moss, I said, Mrs. Moss, tell me about that school you were talking about. She's like, Cinto. I said, Mrs. Moss, tell me about that school. Man, in 30 minutes, we squashed it all. We squashed, right? So that's that gang mediation. That's that racial, understanding racial dynamics. And they're 2 much older people. So I also had to understand that I was the kid at the table. A lot of power dynamics. Honestly, I think that's what's needed on HISD. They remember I said some of these boards are leadership poor. They need some facilitation and some help that knows how to do it and it's been there, not somebody who's going to create a further wedge and division in their community and in that boardroom.
Thanks so much, Cinto. If you have any resources about power mapping, feel free to send them my way. I'm like super intrigued by it. I think it'd be super helpful for what Herc's doing with HISD on the equity project.
I'm gonna send you all 2 things: my email and my cell phone. And I'm gonna tell you again, this is where I think I differ from everybody. Everybody, we go through all these trainings. Don't give out your cell phone. Make them chase it down. No. Like, I'm here for 4 more years, and utilize me however you need it, and I'll get you the power mapping scholarly pieces that I've dug up from my doctoral program. And call me. We could chop it up on the phone or Zoom, or if I'm in Houston, like, for real. I'm about building relationships, and I'm about being part of solutions. So don't hesitate to use those 2.
Appreciate that.
Does anyone have any question for Mr. Cintos? Anybody else?
I have one more question, and I'll try to make this brief. Cinto, I think we have a lot of the pieces in place for us to take our journey. But I think the one piece that's missing is that we have a lot of warriors who have retired, who have spoken up, and I like to say them, they are positive crazies when we can send them out and do things. But how do we organize those folk to come back and join us? Because they are behind the scenes, they are our strength, and they give us encouragement. But they're the people who are fearless and who do scare people. And I want to embrace and organize them so they can come back and join our fight. What would be the first step in doing that?
Oh, I love that one, because one, I'm going to say, I believe there's a role for everyone, right? I absolutely believe there's a role for, I also believe that when roles start getting crossed over, that conflict, we can start turning on one another as a community. So I think I'm a student of history, and especially Chicano leadership. I would look at previous movements. I would look at how they did it, because what I've noticed is that most of these movements get derailed once egos come into play. And it's going to be natural to assume that there's going to be egos at play. Now, my other mentor, he's a pastor. He said, ego is an acronym for edging God out. And so for me, when we create a space, we call it a braver space, is that we're going to invite conflict if conflict is pushing us in the direction of our mission. We're not going to have petty conflict because your ego, you're edging God out, and now you want it to be your name on the front page of that deal, or you want to be the face of the movement, right? And maybe there are conversations, there are movements where a face needed to be identified, and that was the case. But I think for me, it would begin with, I saw a house meeting, absolutely, right? Keeping it local and immediate, having real conversations about when conflict arises. And even the way I train boards and I tell them, look, there's multiple ways you can look at conflict. Do you look at conflict like a battlefield, which some HISD board members look at conflict like a battlefield? In other words, there are going to be dead bodies, there's going to be bloodshed. Do you look at conflict like a competition, like a chess game? You like it, but you're not trying to kill me. You're not trying to take out my political influence. You just want to win. Do you look at conflict like you don't like it? You avoid it, you shy away from it, you shut down, you go into your shell. The fourth one is my favorite one, but really, honestly, I'm all four sometimes. But my favorite one is like a garden. Do I look at conflict like where, Eddie, you and I have built a relationship to the point that when we do have beef and conflict, we're just going to go for a branch or two. We're not going for the roots, meaning that I have faith that our relationship is strong enough that even though we're going to have a heated discussion, possibly, I'm not attacking you as the person, I'm attacking the idea, and you're able to distinguish that. So this conflict, this idea of conflict, is something that I think is key in movements and in community organizing, because it's going to come. And it's usually what derails movements. And it only takes a handful of people. If the base isn't strong enough and the common language and understanding isn't strong, that foundation isn't strong, a handful of people can derail everything. And I see that from being a student of it and watching even movements in Fort Worth. We've had a whole bunch of movements, but I also see, when I see that the leadership changes repeatedly, and I notice that the people come and go or leave and don't even come back, and there's always new faces in a movement, then there's no sustainable leadership either. And then when we lose those voices and those perspectives, there are times that we probably need to lose some because they're so destructive to the work. But I do think that good leadership can maneuver and work with so many different multiple perspectives. So I think studying movement. So for the Brown community, it's La Raza Ni, the political party. The school walkouts in South Texas, in Cristal City, at Calchasa, right? The Black community, a lot of movements. The Asian community, a lot of movements. And the best ones and the most successful ones tend to always be those that find ways to work in solidarity with other groups.
If I can just take myself off mute really quickly. Thank you so much again for, giving some really good insight. I'm an organizer with TMO and One Houston, and we've been actually doing a lot of work with the board and really trying to figure out, how we can, definitely end racial inequities that's happening, especially when it comes to the school and prison pipeline, and the things that's happening in terms of our Black kids getting suspended at disproportionate rates. And I just, hearing some of these questions that's coming out here, it definitely seems like people are interested in definitely building power, because that's the only way, we're going to be able to move the needle, because power recognizes power. And kind of like what you mentioned before, like one of the best ways to like really build power is to have these conversations in the medium of like house meetings. So I like to propose to Miss Janice, you know, who invited me on a call, who I've been working with as well, and to all of us on the call, like let's act, like let's, you know, set some time to like have some house meetings with this group, so we can interact a little bit more with each other, find some common ground, find new leaders, and you know, really continue to build that power. Because like you already said, Cynthia, like we built community, but now it's like really time to start to build power. So you know, I'm here as a resource for sure, and I can definitely like start to coordinate with Ms. Janice. But this has been a moving conversation, and I want to move to act and just put that out there. Like, let's have a house meeting, and I can put my email in the chat, and we can coordinate some things. But let's get it.
Well, actually, we already got that in the work. It's called a house party, because I'm hyped, y'all. I'm hyped. I'm ready to get to work for our children, for our babies, because I know that things can definitely change, and it's going to take us. And, you know, just thinking about what's happened again with the shooting of this young man. I mean, we can't just have these conversations with each other. We need to, you know, if we had when we do have these conversations with each other, we must begin to organize ourselves around those issues and come up with ways to address it. Our voice must be heard. And right now, it's not being heard. And there's too many of us that know that's not helping those that don't know. We have to be that light. And so, man, it's called house party. So I will let y'all know we're gonna have our house party. And Cinto, I know you're gonna be there because I'm gonna pick on you. You messed up and gave Janice your number. I don't know if nobody told you. You should have gave that lady your number, but I'm definitely gonna use it. Anybody else have anything to say?
I'm gonna say right back, Miss Janice, you're gonna mess up when you call me because I'm gonna hit you back just as much. I guess I want to close from my end. You know, my mentors taught me a great deal. They said, when you find great people, cling on to them. Don't let them out of your life. I like to think that I'm pretty good at that, and I've tried to teach my sons that. So as those of you that put your email, you're about to get an email from me, Nehemiah, you put your cell phone, I already text you. Like, it's, to me, that's the basis. Like, you know, to me, like, I think of the greatest leaders that I admire deeply. There are people that never made me feel like I was bothering them. There were people that always made time for me. And I don't care how busy I am. I got a super full schedule, but right here, this is the work. And especially young people, when young people hit me up, I never make them wait longer than 30 minutes to an hour. If I see an email, they always take priority. They ask me for a letter of recommendation in a heartbeat. I mean, I'm writing tons of letters of recommendations, but it's what was done for me. It's exactly what was done for me. And so I had a mentor who said, he told me this one too. He said, don't think that this sugar honey iced tea is free. He said, when you get that position of power, I have high expectations of you, because a bunch of us have put in a lot of work in your development. And while it doesn't sound humble, we're being real with you, Cinto, because human nature is to be self-centered and only think about what's good for you. So know that that's where everything I do comes from somewhere. That's where this comes from. So I appreciate the opportunity to visit with y'all.
So I see people are starting to put their names and email address numbers in the chat. Please do so at this time, so that way, Mr. Cintos, we can share with each other, reach out to each other. There's a lot of work that must be done, guys. Our children need us, and we have to step up and, you know, be that change maker. I mean, I would tell y'all, I've been kicking and screaming, I'm not going. But for some reason, I keep climbing and climbing and climbing. I'm like, I don't want it. And it's like, I guess I just been a pouting child, right? Everybody hear me, but they're not paying me no attention. Man, it's great work needs to be done. And I appreciate the value of the voice. When people bring different perspectives, even when I think that my way is right, and I hear others and I learn that, hey, it's a different way to look at things. So I'm very appreciative of that. This thing just cut off on me. Oh my God.
on the conference call, and would love to go ahead and have Ms. Janice to give my email and my telephone number to the speaker and the one who's facilitating this along with Ms. Janice. I'm just not able to put it in the comments because I'm not on by virtual. I'm by phone. But it was very interesting conversation forum we had today, and it's much needed. And an awesome, awesome job that you guys did. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice. We see that you're still on mute, and we will organize this again. I see, Janice, you're back.
Yeah, it kicking me out, man. You know that enemy. I always try to get in the way, but you know what? I ain't giving up. So at least I was able to continue the conversation. Again, thank you, Mr. Sintos, for your time, for sharing your words of wisdom, sharing your experiences. I mean, the good, the bad. I mean, I really appreciate that. I appreciate you keeping it raw and real. It helped me not be too hesitant about, what I want to say, that when I see something is not right, that is wrong. So I really, really appreciate that. Looking forward to doing some more work with you. And I just know we're going to be working together. So thank you again for your time. Thank everybody that joined us today. Shout out to my parents who are here. I mean, I have one parent, she's my Fleming parent. And I love this lady to death because she's always online. And she's getting a wealth of knowledge and information that's going to help her in so many different ways. And so I really appreciate her. Anybody have anything else before we go and end this session? No one has anything? I know y'all have to talk to me because I never know when this computer froze.
Ms. Janice, I'll just have a one-word checkout of how I feel. I feel humbled, and I feel revolutionary having met all of you. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Center, I just jumped on. My name is Oliver Burbridge, and I'm a former principal of the Juvenile Justice Center downtown here in Houston, and also a JPO myself. So I caught some of your initial talk, and I had to go off because I had a student emergency. I'm at Lamar High School. I'm doing some work with community and schools. So we're in one accord. I mean, if I could mention that, especially among our Black and brown students when it comes to achievement, underserved, and we have a big, what COVID did was identify the big void that we have digitally and instructionally with the parents. So I'm honored to know Janet. I've been knowing her for quite a while. We talk and talk about different issues. The number one issue to me is how are we going to have our kids succeed in this environment? This educational environment that even 40, 50 years ago was kind of not for us. And now it's really, because we have to really kind of get together. So I appreciate your words and what Janet is doing with Discovering You and everything like that. So I'm on board too. And we're going to try to help our kids succeed.
Awesome. I'm just reminded that them babies are taken care of, y'all. It's us better keep up. My 9-year-old grandbaby come to me, tell me, Gammy, my teacher's talking about she was off today. And I say, so was she off? She said, no, she was on Instagram posting pictures. I'm like, oh my. Those babies are learning that stuff and they are all over the place with it. So we better watch it. All right, guys, thank you again for your time. I love each and every one of you, and look out for information about our next. We're gonna have our house party and come up with some plans. So
Dennis,
thank you again. Ma'am?
Yes, I'd like to say something. My name is Hyunja Norman. I am Asian American. When I listen to conversation, this is my first time here, so it is so inspiring. And I'd like to also point out one thing. Asian Americans who came here as a refugee or some kind of undocumented people, when they were young, they committed gang they become a gang members. And now, after serving their sentence, they are, what is it? Because they do not have citizenship, they are
undocumented?
Yeah, undocumented, so they are deported.
Okay.
These kind of things are serious issues because they do not know where they come from. Their original country, they don't have anything. But here, because they do not have paper, they trying to send the got deported. Those things, maybe African American community, maybe they do not, you guys do not face these kinds of difficulties, but I'd like to remind you, we are also having difficulties, our members, okay? Also, I'd like to work together to the Asian American community and African American community, as a Latino community. And I also learned just so many youngsters that came to Houston, right? As in last week, 2 weeks or something like that. If they don't get enough resources and education, how they are going to survive in this environment, then they will end up as a school and they will face difficulty and then end up same thing, pipeline, jail, and deportation. I think we need to work together for every kid, regardless of their immigration status. So I want to bring this point to you guys, because this is the Asian American point, right? Yeah.
Wow. I really appreciate you speaking up, Ms. Norman. And you're right, we must work together. This needs to be unified efforts. And I really, really appreciate you sharing with us the difficulties that you all also face. Not that it's overlooked, but we all are in this together. And so I'm sure Cinto took great notes on that. And he's definitely gonna be, I don't know if I want to text him my number. I'm in trouble. But thank you, Ms. Norman, for sharing that. And we must work together, guys, because it's for our children. We have to create that pathway of success for them. And so that's the treasure I plan on leaving for my grandbaby is creating a pathway of success so she don't have to deal with some of the situations that we're dealing with, as she told me. I'm not having this in my life, Gammy. I'm like, okay. So again, thank you guys. No one has anything else? We will be on at 6 o'clock. I don't know if Mr. Cintos is available, but he is definitely welcome. So thank you guys, and I look forward to those of you who are able to join us this evening. But we will have hopefully a different crowd be added to the conversations.
Thank you, Janice.
Thank you.